Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another super exciting episode of The Book Boat. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jocelyn Rodriguez, and my other lovely co-host.
And I'm Alejandra, and welcome to another super exciting episode. I'm very excited. We have gotten really lucky, and this is our third guest in general, our second this season. And it is my great friend, Veronica Minor. If you want to give us a little introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself, Veronica.
Hello, I'm Veronica, and I started my grad school program with these two lovely hosts, but I'm actually also in the special ed credential program, so mine lasts a little bit longer, still in school, but I did finish my master's. So now
Yay!
Working on my second credential.
Nice. That's so exciting. I haven't seen you since this whole shelter in place has happened.
I know.
We didn't even get to say goodbye or have an end of the year party. So I'm really excited to see you and just have you here. You are bringing in some amazing books. So tell us, what have you been doing?
Yeah, so I last semester I did my second semester of student teaching, and that's also when I was finishing up my master's program. And then outside of that, I have two rabbits now that I've been taking care of that are right next to me, of course.
And they are super cute. I gave up social media for Lent, so I haven't gotten to see any videos you've sent me, but I'm really excited for when I can log back in and I can see the videos you send me of your rabbits are so cute. But I feel like extra special about this episode and this guest. Veronica and I got super close when the program started, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I picked the book that I picked. It talks a little bit about making friends, and I just remember I was super nervous when I was going to start the program because I was like I was telling my friends, I was like, am I going to make friends? Like, I don't, as adults, how does this work? And Veronica and I ended up kind of sitting next to each other on the first day. And then our classes were so long and we had a lunch break, which was kind of short for the amount of time that we were there. And everybody just seemed to pair off and go off to get lunch. And I just remember standing there does everybody know each other? And I just don't know anybody. And then I don't even know how it happened, but we were like, do you want to get lunch? And then it kind of just became a routine where we would go and we'd sit outside on this little table and we would have lunch together. And I don't know, the rest is just history. Veronica and I just work really well together. We worked on a lot of projects together. I've gotten very lucky where I feel, especially even with Jocelyn, I feel like I need a partner where I'm able to spit out my ideas and they're kind of able to put it in a nice format and organized. So I've gotten very lucky with, working with both of you, but yeah, I'm really excited to have you on, Veronica.
Excited to be here. I've never been on a podcast, so
well, I had
pretty fun.
But if we want to get started with, I'll let you introduce the first book, which I remembered you told me a little bit about it, and then it somehow ended up, I'm doing a book of the month for my students, and I actually picked the book that Veronica picked too. And
I know.
Yeah, I was so happy, and I was like, okay, we definitely have to get you on the podcast, and we definitely have to talk about this book. So I'm so excited. If you want to go ahead and introduce the book.
Yeah, this book is called Ruby Finds a Worry by Tom Percival. And I really loved this book because it's such a good way of starting a conversation about mental health and worries and anxiety, because it's made the way that the book is written, it's really short sentences. It's mostly focusing on pictures, which also do a really good job of illustrating how the main character feels. In this picture, it's all black and white. She's feeling really worried, and then her little worry monster is right behind her. And it just is kind of about, she's feeling fine, and then all of a sudden this worry shows up, and the worry grows, and it just takes her being able to talk with others about feelings to kind of realize I'm not the only one, and it's okay to have worries sometimes. And I just really love it. And I think it's something that's kind of good for any age. It can help a first grader, but it could also help people as adults, really, because it's hard to talk about emotions sometimes without, you know, being serious and without actually talking about problems. So
yes, thank you. So I love that you said this is a really good book for starting out a conversation about mental health, especially with, I think that there have been generations where it's almost like frowned upon to talk about like what you're feeling, how, like, what is giving you anxiety, like what's causing you to worry. And so I think that we're going in this like right direction of asking students like what is going on, like how, and like teaching them how to talk about their feelings, so that they grow up and be adults that are just like easy to conversate and that they can communicate like what is wrong. And so I really love that there's like more books centered around like the mental health of a child. Yeah,
I really wish that this is a book that like I had when I was growing up as somebody with anxiety.
Yeah, no, I love, and once you like told me about this book, I kind of looked up the author and I realized that he's doing a whole series that's called Big Bright Feelings. And I think right now they have about 6 books. One's supposed to come out later this year, which I'm really excited about. But I quickly wanted to just talk about the book that I also read, which is called Misha Makes Friends, which talks about actually, hold on, give me one moment. I looked it up because I wanted to make sure I got the summary right, but it's talking about how Misha doesn't know like what to say or how to like talk to peers, and like her social cues. It mentions how the social cues she doesn't necessarily have. I don't want to like, she doesn't know how to communicate with her peers, and she is just really struggling navigating social situations to make friends. But in the story, it's very similar. I think the author is also the illustrator, because you could see a lot of similarities where a lot of the background is kind of gray and a lot of the details are these bright, beautiful colors. So you can see that Misha is at the beginning, she really struggles talking to her friends. Like she'll just go up to kids and be like, okay, tag, you're it, and run away, where the, like, you know, she wants to play, she just doesn't know how to communicate that. But she is so
that was
creative.
me.
She's so creative, and she would create these little toys out of like milk cartons and like cereal boxes. And then her parents really want her to go to this party, but she like doesn't know how to interact with like the other students. So she like goes off and she is downstairs like making her own little toys when a boy comes up to her and then he wants to help her. So I love that we are talking about that these books are addressing, you know, mental health, but I also really liked that they didn't necessarily like put a label on it. And I think it's really important for students as well, because they're trying to figure out like how they're feeling and don't necessarily need or want this label already before like navigating how they're even feeling or like what they're feeling.
Yeah, these books, they just kind of give you an ability to see like, okay, this is an emotion that I'm feeling, and you know, there you can like say like, okay, like I am feeling where, you know, it does kind of give like words to help you explain to other people how you're feeling without saying, you know, I have been diagnosed with anxiety, I am an anxious child, you know. It just gives like easy to use words. And then also I want to get that book now, because that was also me as a child. All of these books I feel like were me as a child.
Well, I really liked it because I was looking up the synopsis of all of the books in the series, which they all look absolutely amazing, but I felt like I really related to this one because I mentioned earlier how on the first day, like I was really nervous. I was like, how am I going to go up to somebody? Like, we're all adults. Like, how do you become friends as adults? Like, it just seemed like a very tricky thing. So I definitely related to that. And I was like, oh, I feel like this is a really special book. And I want to bring it up. And I've definitely, you know, I've seen students in the class where they are like amazingly talented at maybe something that's not the same that the other kids might be interested in or know about, and that they've struggled to connect. And I want them, Janet, how you were saying, like, you know, you wish you had this book when you were younger. And I want my students to be able to have a book that they can kind of see themselves in.
Yeah. I love both of the books. I really love, I'm like, we say like, we're very big, like picture and illustration people. So I really
Oh, me
love how
too.
it's just like, it's so cute. And I know like, we're not supposed to judge books by their cover, but it just happens. But just like the fact that like only the child and like their anxiety or like their anxiety monster or just them like in their toys is just highlighted. So it makes it really like the child is at the center of this whole book. But I have a question for you, Veronica, if you don't mind me asking.
Mhm.
How did you said that you were anxious like person. How did you like
Yeah.
navigate through that through elementary school? Because I mean, I'm not one, but I definitely like had troubles making friends. And I know that like anxiety can just like amplify that. So
Yeah. It's funny because at the beginning of my master's project, I was originally working with another student, and she was so surprised because she said, you know, how did you get through middle school and high school without anxiety? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. But for me, it was like elementary school was rough. Like, I remember preschool, actually, my preschool teacher told my mom she's not ready to go to elementary school. She's not going to make it because I couldn't make friends. Like, I literally would go into preschool and I would like play with the dollhouse, or I'd make a little sandcastle, and I wouldn't talk to anybody. There was like one like student teacher that I was like, I could talk to you. And then I did end up going to kindergarten, and kind of like in the book you showed, Alejandra, didn't know how to make friends. I would sit underneath the slide during recess and play with the tambark and watch the other students playing. But in my head, I was playing. Like, that was a normal like way to play. I actually talk about it a lot in my master's project, about parallel play and non-social play. Like, that was me as a child. I wasn't playing with others, but in my head I was still playing. But yeah, I didn't know how to approach kids. I would just kind of be in my own little world, and it took my teacher kind of forcing a friendship on me, and like with one of the kids that was more outgoing, and she was just kind of like, come on, Veronica. And then I started to talk with other students more and make other friends and play with them. But yeah, I would basically come home every day. My mom likes to say that when I came home is when I would be, you know, miserable, and I would like scream and throw tantrums. But everyone else would be like, oh, like she's such a well-behaved child. But it's like when I came home, I'd be like, ah! But it was just my anxiety without realizing it. I didn't know how to express like all of these feelings that I was feeling. Like, I always felt so much pressure in my chest, and like I was just like, oh, a ball of worry. And then I would come home and just scream, like, because I just was a mess. Yeah. And that was me for most of elementary school. Even I think I didn't stop throwing tantrums until I was 10. And I just remember one day throwing a tantrum and being like, nope, I can't do this anymore. I'm 10. Yeah. But it was because I didn't know how to deal with any of my feelings. So yeah, elementary school, I loved it, but it was hard when I didn't have the words to know what I was feeling. Just knew that I was terrified and worried about everything.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go for it. Go for it. No, go for it.
I was just going to bring up how I know you mentioned like it's something similar to your master's project, where I think it's super important to where you were saying like your teacher kind of was there and she was like giving you these notebooks to like write how you were feeling, but that wasn't necessarily like what you needed. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about kind of that.
Yeah, so I know a lot of times like with students and like it's important for teachers to know or to make sure that the students know like I care about you, which is really great and it's really important. And some students may need that more than others. For me, like being reached out to by my teacher and like having interactive journals with my teacher didn't really help me, because I already knew that my teacher cared, but I also was terrified of sharing anything. So in my interactive journals, I would just write, what is your favorite color? You know, do you like flower? Like, I think there's one page in my journal that I actually shared emotions. And it was when my like childhood dog died. And it's just a big picture like a circular head and a bunch of tears, and that's all it was.
Yeah.
Like, it was so hard for me to share. So yeah, I loved my teachers and I knew that they cared about me, but it was my peers that I didn't feel as connected to. So yeah, while I was working on my project, I realized that I was centering myself a lot and like centering the teacher, making the kids or the students know that they're cared about. But then I kind of changed my focus and realized I need my students to know that my students care about each other, is kind of the focus that I took after realizing, wow, this probably wouldn't have helped me when I was a small anxious child. I need to figure out what I needed. What did little Veronica need at that time?
Not to put you on the spot here, but I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your master's project. What did it really focus on? What did you find out from it?
Yeah, so originally I always knew that I wanted to focus on kind of like anxiety and mental health, but I started working on my project just like you two did before the pandemic. So I had to make some changes, you know, and it kind of began to focus more on building student connections with each other in the online classroom, because that's hard enough. Like, you know, usually you go into class, you sit next to somebody, maybe you'll talk to them, but like now it's just a bunch of faces staring at each other. It's harder to, you know, form that classroom environment. So my master teacher really was good at helping me with this project too. Like, I think that we were able to build a pretty strong class community really quickly. However, that was mostly because the kids were comfortable talking to us. So I wanted to also make sure that they felt comfortable talking to each other, because, you know, everyone hated the dreaded breakout rooms. You just go and stare at each other. Nobody talks. So I ended up using read alouds in books to kind of talk about, because, you know, everybody's experiencing a lot of emotions during the pandemic. And then I also used podcast time, which I think my mentor teacher still uses, because the students just demand it at this point. They're like, where's our podcast? But we would end the days with podcasts, and the students could, you know, talk in the chat, they could share, and then they would bring it up, you know, like during the day, just randomly. They'd be like, oh, like what's going to happen? You know, it's something that kind of connected them together that I think they really liked. We had some mystery podcasts, adventure podcast, like all kinds of kids podcasts. I found a really cool website called Pinna, and they just have a lot of different podcasts. And they have some diverse podcasts too. Like, it's not just all, you know, a bunch of white kids or random animals, like in children's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a diverse podcast here, I love that you are bringing in podcast into the classroom. But no, I think it's so important. I think I don't know, like once you said that, my mind totally changed, where it's like, yeah, you know, I think teachers are a huge part in like helping build that classroom connection. And of course, we want our students to know that we care about them. But at the end of the day, as a student, like you're going to go and have recess. You want to hang out with friends, you know, or like ideally it would be with kids. You're not going to want to hang out with your teacher, you know, all the time. And I think that is so important in building that classroom community where they feel comfortable with one another.
Yeah, exactly what Alejandra said. Just like building that, and like even through Zoom, it sometimes like seems like you said, like there's just faces staring back at you and you're like, what do I do in this moment? And there's been times where I do like put my students in breakout rooms and they all just turn off their cameras and nobody says anything. And it turns into like, okay, what are we doing about this? And so even today they have been testing for the past like 2.5 weeks. And rather than like my admin's like, oh, well, grades are due today, so make sure they complete like missing exit tickets. And rather than just like almost exhaust them with more work, we just sat there and we played movies and we let them pick off our Disney Plus, whatever movie they wanted to watch.
I was gonna say, I love that. I am so for this, Jocelyn. Kids are exhausted.
Yeah. And I just was like, I cannot force them to go do another exit ticket. Like they're tired.
It's
like,
just, they're drained.
Yeah. And so we open up our chat because most of the time, like our chats are kind of closed. So it's only they can talk to us. And we opened it up, and me and the other teacher, we were just like kind of amazed at how much they just return to kids. And we were like, this is amazing. Like in class, they're super quiet. They don't like really talk, or some of them like don't participate. But the moment we were all just watching movies and like kind of like talking about like our favorite parts, if we were watching movies like we grew up watching, and we're like, oh, I love watching this. Like I used to have like a Woody toy and all of this stuff. And it's just that like connection allowed students to like then start forming.
Yes.
And then they're like, find me on my like Xbox game that they play. And I was like, oh, like now they're actually like making friends outside of just school. And it was just those moments right there. It's just like, oh, this is why I love being a teacher, is like kids being kids.
Yeah, right. Like, and that's so important, especially because after school, like, are they really spending time with other kids right now? Like, no, they need time to just be able to be social. Like, we also had Friday fun time where we would put them into breakout rooms based off like, you know, do you want to play games together? Do you want to do art? Like, do you want to just have a social group? So then they would go into their breakout rooms and they'd all get to just be kids. But then also for the breakout rooms, if we were doing like more academic stuff, there were some kids who would every time, you know, like turn off the camera, go to the bathroom, be like, oh, well, I was in the bathroom. Like it's not my fault. But we knew like, what is it that we're working on? Okay, it's reading. Every single time we go to breakout rooms for reading, you're leaving. So with students like that, we would take them to the side kind of before breakout rooms just to kind of ease them into it, ease their anxieties, kind of say like, okay, this is what we're reading. Do you want to practice reading out loud before we go in? And that kind of helped those students to be able to participate more in the breakout rooms.
I love that. I have at the school I'm teaching at, all my students with IEPs, they're like fully inclusive or I can never say that word right. But yes, they're fully part of our classroom. And I was learning there was one student who has anxiety with speaking. And so I can't like ever cold call on this student to read anything or to answer a question, because the student will just kind of feel anxiety. And then they happen to just kind of get like really just like, I can't read. And so I work really closely with the special ed teacher. And she told me, she's like, yeah, there's no problem if you want to call on him. All you have to do is just send him a message in the chat being like, hey, like you're coming up and like, do you mind answering a question in 2 minutes? And just that has been like a whole where he's like, he's willing, or he'll even message me in the chat, be like, can I go in like a couple minutes? And I said, yes, absolutely. So it's just like little things of like getting to know where that student's anxiety is coming from. And has been a totally different student. Yeah.
And it's like one of those are like the little, because I know like as teachers, obviously being on Zoom is so difficult. And I think like hearing little successes like that makes it, you know, like kids are learning and they are, you know, things are happening when we're on Zoom because, like you mentioned cold calling, I, as a student, would hate it. And I'd get so nervous, which is why I try not to do it with my students, but I'll open up my chat and I'll have them, okay, send me like your answers and I'll send you a message if like, we're going to call on you and things like that. And I've definitely seen it work where some of my students who were super nervous have now like, they feel confident because they know that they kind of tested out the answer with just me first. Now they feel comfortable enough to share it with the class.
Yeah, I remember specifically, I don't remember what grade I was in. I had a teacher who used like the call cards, but they were always in the same order. And I'd be like, okay, right now they're on Madison. So then there's just Jeffrey. And then they're like, I would remember the order of just so that, because I was terrified. I hated it.
Yeah, and it's hard, but I guess this is like one of the nice little perks of Zoom is like we can kind of talk to them on the side without, you know, making a bigger deal in front of everybody. But I do want to get part of our episode is like where we kind of talk about like who writes the stories, who benefits from the stories, and who's missing from the story. I tried to look up the author a little bit. I don't know if any of you guys had better luck than I did, but Mr. Tom seems to be a little bit of a mystery because I could not pull up a lot of information about him. I did see like an interview where he kind of described himself as being quiet and creative and thoughtful as a child, which I could definitely see like why he would then want to write these books. And it kind of makes me happy where it's like somebody who could definitely relate to these books is writing how these kids are feeling. And his hope is that through the Big Bright Feeling series, kids are able to kind of explore different emotions and why they feel the way they do. So I think it's kind of great that he is the person who's then writing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I think he's a white man, at least from what I can tell.
I think he is.
Right?
Yeah.
But like these books are so like kind of vague. Like you don't talk a lot about like you know like this whole child's history and things. So it's a book where it's very easy to put, you know, like a person of color or someone that is different than the author in these books. So
yeah, I was just about to say I loved that in his books he usually features a really diverse cast, because even in like even just the title Misha, like, you know, it's not I guess a typical like a common name, but it's, you know, it's a name, and I'm glad that he picked that one. But if you look at just the other characters, I mean, most of the drawings are gray, so you can kind of like put what you would like, but you can tell that, you know, his characters are diverse, and I loved that about it. And when I was looking at the other books, it also seemed like he's kind of having a diverse cast. Like, how cute are these? I am obsessed with them.
Yeah,
I know.
Cute. Yes.
Yeah,
now,
I love
Veronica, do you think that anything is missing from these stories? Or do you think there's anybody that is missing?
I'd say with these stories, like they are so simple that they do what they're meant to do. This is meant to talk about a student with worries. I'd say the one thing is your worries don't always go away just from finding someone else with a worry and talking about it with them. Like that's kind of how this story ends, with she talks to a little boy who also has a worry, and then it's all rainbows and butterflies, you know, which that can happen. It can really help to be able to just get those big emotions out, but it's not gonna save the day and be like, okay, now everything is fine because I talked about what I was worried about, you know? So I guess if there is something that's missing, it would be that doesn't always solve it.
Yeah,
but
not
it's a
every
good
story
way.
has a happy
good
ending.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Going to the last one, who benefits from the stories? I think every student could benefit from the story. Parents, adults. Sometimes I feel like as adults, we need to just all sit down and have a read aloud. But I think this is a book that really can benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because, you know, even if you don't always feel worried, you know, I don't know what that's like, but even if you don't always feel worried, you know, at some point in your life, you're going to have a worry, but also it can kind of get you to realize like, okay, maybe this is how other people are feeling right now. You know, you don't always know how other people are feeling. And so it can kind of help you see other people's emotion, understand other people's emotions better too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing this book and sharing your story and everything. We love having you on here. And like we said in an earlier episode, this has been a very big season. We've had an author, another amazing guest. So thank you so much, Veronica, for coming on here.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Yes.
Do you want to say our ending question, Jocelyn?
Yes, absolutely. So talking about students' mental health and everything, what do you as a parent or a teacher say to a student or a child that comes up to you and is just expressing some anxious feelings? Like, what do you say? I think that all of us kind of approach it differently. So it's always good to kind of give a little bit of word of advice, like maybe I tried doing this, or maybe I have different like techniques or things of just comforting the child. So what are some things you say? Or do.
We are super curious, so please let us know. And for the ending challenge, I kind of want to challenge teachers, educators, parents, like finding a way to help students kind of interact with each other, like to promote social interactions. Like Veronica mentioned, she brought in podcasts to her class. And I think that's like a great way where you were sharing them and students were all kind of able to kind of connect on that. So I would love to kind of hear what other people are doing or how they are kind of promoting social interactions between their students, especially right now over Zoom, where we kind of talked about how sometimes we're just little boxes kind of staring at each other, from the little kids to us adults. I know it's happened in staff meetings where we got put in breakout rooms and we're all just kind of looking at one another. But yeah, so this is going to be wrapping up our episode. And I am so so thankful, Veronica, that you were here and that you were our guest. It truly means a lot, and especially to cover this topic, because I think it's super important, and hopefully it'll help some students. So
Yeah.
all right, before we leave, please remember to subscribe to our podcast. We are on all major podcast platforms. Give us a rating. It would really mean a lot. I've been looking at Apple Podcasts. I saw some of our reviews went up, but I have not seen a comment. So I'm also going to challenge, if you're listening, like pause this right now, go and leave a little comment. It doesn't have to be long. I'm not requiring you to write a whole paragraph. Just great. A great would be nice. So yes, please give us a rating, leave a review. Follow
Fantastic guest.
I think I might like make another account and write that, but follow our YouTube. And this is what I wanted to follow up on, because after most of our episodes, my brother has been writing me feedback. So I know you're listening to me right now. His suggestion was you need a better intro for your YouTube videos. And Veronica, I might have to take you up on the helping to create an intro for our videos, because I know you mentioned.
Yes, I want to help.
Yes, that would mean a lot. And I'm sure I'm going to get a nice text from him laughing at this, but I just had a sigh. Did you hear my sigh? I carried that weight since his last.
We're not tech savvy.
Yes, I'm not tech savvy. I only have a microphone
gosh.
because you gave me this microphone. I'm putting my brother on blast right now. All right. But yes, follow our YouTube. They are not high quality, but I think they are high, like our content is amazing, I have to say. Follow our Instagram at _bookboat and like us on Facebook at the Book Boat. Sorry, I just had to let that out. I had to unleash this.
It's okay.
You had to talk about your emotions.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Veronica. But is there any last words you guys would like to say before we end it?
No, just
Thanks
thank you
for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. We are honored that you are our guest, and thank you for everyone for listening. Yep.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.